I like it. And that music means it is Friday morning. Comes around the same time every week. And I always say that, don't I, Nancy?
I know that's right.
And I always remind you, this is the Happy Hour broadcast with old Dr. Paul and his co-host, Nancy, who's
I'm glad
also...
you didn't say old Nancy.
No, just Nancy.
Even in the
By the
Bible,
way,
they don't call their wives old.
by the way, since you mention it, tomorrow Nancy will have her annual birthday. She has one every year. Always falls on September 28th.
Yeah.
And so tomorrow is Nancy's birthday. Keep those cards and letters coming, especially the letters, because they have room for you to put that shuffle money in there. I don't want to hear them rattle. I don't want to hear any rattle. You know, being a good preacher, you got to remember to use metal offering plates so that people won't drop change in there, because it makes noise. They always put in shuffle money.
That's good.
But you see, times have changed. Now people are giving online, and they're using credit cards. Offering plates are almost a thing of the past. They really are. By the way, this is the friendliest show on radio. It is the best look on Facebook. And don't be a goober, be a YouTuber and watch us, okay? How's that, Matt? We have as our chief engineer today, Matthew Dillon Pearson, and his sidekick just disappeared someplace.
He's talking to Jeremiah.
All right. Anyway, we are happy to have a wonderful guest with us today, a lady we've known a few years, and we can honestly say there's a marvelous friendship that exists between us, and it's one of those kind of friendships that you just have to say you love this lady. You love her very much. Her name is Bobby Terry. Oh, by the way, I have to greet my friend Shirley Simpson in St. Joe. She was my first secretary, and Shirley is an avid watcher and listener to this broadcast, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate Jerry Chambers over in Chesterfield, Missouri, and some folks up in Northeast Missouri, and other people in Northwest Missouri in the St. Joe neighborhood, and in Germany, and in France. So, to our listeners in France, I say, il est très bonjour aujourd'hui, n'est-ce pas, mon ami? And for those of you like Matthew
I'm on a roll today.
Matthew Dillon Pearson, who don't understand French, I said, it is a beautiful day today, isn't it, my good friend?
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do we reach into Texas?
Well, of course.
All over the world.
Okay, so do you think Lyle and Darlene Way?
Oh, yeah, Lyle and Darlene Way out in Ransom Canyon, Texas, in the Lubbock neighborhood. They'd be watching, and Lyle is a Christian novelist, writes great stories. They live just off the capstone. It's called right off the rock, right off the cap rock, because under Lubbock, you dig down about yay deep. See that, Matthew? And you hit rock. So they pipe their water to Lubbock from Amarillo. So,
Not great water.
so just off of the capstone, off the cap, they call it, is Ransom Canyon, Texas, and our friends Lyle and Darlene Way. Well, let's get to our guest here after my disclaimer. I have to warn you, anything you see or hear on this broadcast, you cannot hold Acts Ministry responsible, nor Acts Media Group. They're not responsible, even though they own all this stuff. By the way, I wish sometime, Matthew, we could show them a picture of the cameras that we use so that people will know that we're not in the lap of luxury here. We've got a telethon coming up, and it's going to be very important to bolster the budget because we're doing a great work as Acts Ministry, and we're doing it on a very frayed shoestring. So that's my disclaimer. Now we get to our guest. Bobby is an unusual and unique person. She is a pharmacist, a practicing pharmacist, but we want to talk about her hobby first, which is shooting wild hogs.
Oh, no.
She loves to hunt wild hogs in Texas. Bobby,
I do.
yeah, get that microphone up there a little bit closer. There you go.
Okay.
Tell us about hog hunting in Texas. Hog hunting in Texas.
Well, I mean, for hunters, it's a lot of fun. We do a lot of different hunting. Hog hunting is one of the most exciting. We usually go bow hunting in Texas, so we've been doing it for several years. So, yeah.
You hunt wild hogs with bow and arrow?
We do, yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So you have to get a little closer to them than you would with the than you would with a rifle.
Those things get
So-
pretty big, don't they?
Oh, some of them do. Yeah. Yeah. Some of them do.
How,
So.
what would you guesstimate a full-grown wild hog's weight at?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I think the some of them are huge. They might be 300 pounds or so. 350. Probably on an average. Maybe 100 pounds. But they're much smaller as well. So they're wild. So they're they range in
They're
size
leaner.
from tiny to
They haven't
yes.
been corn-fed to
There
get
you
fat.
go. Yes, they are very lean. So yes, and they can be very elusive as well in the woods.
Now, you go to Texas to hunt them.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a reason you go all the way to Texas?
Well, when we first started hunting several years ago, gosh, I don't know, it's probably been 10 years ago, 12 years ago. They weren't really in this area, so Texas is kind of where you had to go. Now, of course, they're coming up into Arkansas and into Missouri now. So that's kind of how we started doing that.
Well, Missouri doesn't want you to hunt them.
That is correct now.
They
Yes.
they got this thing.
Yes.
I get the Missouri Conservationist
Yes.
magazine, and they want to trap them.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what do they do with them after they trap them? Do they butcher them and give the meat to schools or something?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
It'd be
I really
interesting to
don't
find
know.
out.
Yeah.
I know what you do. You folks eat them.
We put them on the smoker and eat them. Yeah, my husband puts them on our big smoker. We have a great big smoker, and we put them on there, and it is just unbelievably wonderful. And like you said, because they're not corn fed, they are wild. So the meat does taste different, and it is great.
I've heard that wild hog is very superior to store-bought
Yes.
pork.
Yes.
I've heard the same thing about wild turkey, that there are people who really like wild turkey but don't care much for store-bought turkey.
Correct. And we hunt turkey as well.
Oh.
I
Well-
haven't been fortunate enough to get one of those with my bow. They're a little bit harder.
Well,
so
aren't you
use
the-
a shotgun on that one, but
Aren't
yes.
you the
but,
little blonde huntress
I
you?
am, yeah. If you see me in my camouflage gear, you wouldn't recognize me.
Oh, I'll
So,
bet.
yeah.
That's right.
But yes, turkey is awesome.
Now, if you use a firearm, what do you use?
Well, it depends on what you're
Yeah.
shooting. If
Well-
I'm shooting a deer, I use a 243.
A 243. I am so uninformed anymore about firearms. I don't know what a 243 is. I'll bet Matthew Dillon Pearson knows. He's going to look it up.
Uh-oh. You're gonna have to quiz him now.
He's going to Google it. A 243, it's a rifle,
Correct.
and
yes.
it packs a
yes.
pretty punch.
It does, yeah. But there's several different types of, guns that you can use. Use a shotgun for turkeys.
I
Usually
think
use
it's
a
a model
12 gauge.
from right before the 242, or
So-
right after the 242, right before the 244.
There you go. That's
Okay.
it. Perfect.
All right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just picked up a Mazda Nagant the other day.
It sounds like you've just given me a definite maybe.
Exactly.
That's
Giving you the Dr. Paul treatment.
That's right. That's the kind of treatment I give it. By the way, speaking of that kind of stuff, this telethon coming up,
Yeah.
October 28 and 29. Say a word, 30 seconds about that.
30 seconds?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got
One,
it
two,
is
three.
a live stream telethon. They're 12 hours a day, Monday and Tuesday, the 28th and 29th of October.
Right?
And we are still looking for people that want to have commercials, people that want to sponsor half-hour segments at a time, or hour segments, whichever you prefer. Okay, we're doing this not because we want to line our pockets. We're doing this because we need operating funds bad.
That's
to
right.
Make sure. A lot of people, I'm sure, think, oh, that churches only want money. That's not what we're doing. We're
No.
doing this so that we can keep bringing the gospel and great shows to you guys
That's right.
through Axe Media Group and Axe Television Network. It costs money to do this. All of our workers are volunteers. So the costs are 100% operation costs No profit involved in any way, shape, or form.
That's right. And they will be given a pretty complete financial picture as the telethon goes along,
Yep.
so they'll know exactly where we are and what's going on.
If you
In
have
the
any questions
meantime,
and you want to see what we do here, come on up. I
Sure.
will take you on a short tour through this office.
it
and
doesn't
show you
take very
guys-
long to tour 800 square feet.
Exactly, but to let people know what we do here so they can actually see what it is we do.
And for those of you who are not in Springburg, USA, my favorite little
It's
city,
Springfield, for those of you who don't know, Dr. Paul.
we are in Missouri. We're in the southwest quarter of Missouri, which puts us right in the middle of the United States, in the middle of the world. And we are just about in Center City almost anymore at on East Sunshine, South Glenstone in the Plaza Towers. And we're on the directory board downstairs and so forth. So take Matthew up on a tour. Call him up. Say, Matthew, I want to take a tour of the 800 square feet and come aboard. And all those folks that by the hundreds who listen and they don't have businesses to put in a pretty good sized chunk of change to help us, send what you can. Go online to the Axe Media Group and hit that donate button.
Or they could, if they don't want to hit the donate button, just go to Axe Media Group. It's and here, you know what? Let me put this up here on the screen for everybody.
Yeah, put it up there.
Go to axemediagroup.com/please-donate.
Okay,
That'll take you right to our PayPal donation page.
Good.
You can set up a monthly donation, or you can do a one-time donation.
all right.
Everything, no matter what the amount, everything is accepted and put to use to continue to further do what we do.
And folks would be amazed to see the simplicity of this operation, and yet what we're doing now, Bobby, is reaching around the world.
That's
Literally.
amazing.
Isn't that
It
amazing?
is amazing, yes.
I'm still amazed.
It's not very simple over here. On my end, the computers are confusing at times, but other than that, for the most part, it is pretty simple. We're reaching out into Pakistan now. We've got listener viewers in Pakistan,
That's wonderful.
Oh, wow.
France, like you just mentioned. Still continue to get people from Germany. We've had viewers from Trinidad, of course, Belize, where naturalsolutionstore.bz is located.
Right. And they're one of our sponsors. So go
Our
to
main sponsor.
go to naturalsolutionstore.b as in boy, z as in zebra, and out of 45 or 46 or 7 or 8 products of natural supplements, there's something for everybody. Press the button and order something. I think not only men but women ought to be taking CoQ10, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Good for their hearts.
I'll talk about that here in just a little bit when I do my commercial.
All right, we're working on your commercial because I'm going back to Bobby, and we're going to finish up our hog hunting escapade here because I want to know, is there a season on wild hogs in Texas?
There's not.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You can hunt any time in Texas.
Do you have any
so-
idea how many people actively hunt wild hogs in Texas?
I really don't know. I know that you do have to purchase a tag to
Okay.
hunt down there in Texas. And I know when we've gone into Texas, people see you buying your tags. And just kind of, in conversation, people will be like, oh, I wish you'd come on my property because, we have wild hogs all the time. And we'd really like to, have somebody, come and hunt. And so I know there's a lot. I know there's a lot of people that hunt. I know there's a lot of people out of state that hunt. So, that, that go down there. We have a lot of friends. Sometimes we go down there as a group. Of us, and sometimes it's just the 3 of us. So, so
Well, now, do you suppose it's possible that one of the good old Texas boys who has a small spread, 3,000 acres or something other, in Texas, that's a small spread,
Correct.
that he just might kill a wild hog without a tag?
well, possibly, but I know, in the state of Missouri, if you own land, if you own
That's
over so
right.
much land that you're able to get a landowner tag. So I'm sure that Texas is probably the same.
Do you know they're raising that in Missouri from a smaller plot to a larger plot of ground so that people, and it has to be contiguous.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they've gone from like 5 acres to 20 acres or something like that. Just read that. In the-
Right. Right.
Anyway, wonderful and interesting information.
Thank you.
When you're in Texas and you stop at a roadside barbecue and you order that pulled pork sandwich, who knows? It's probably going to taste better than anything you
That's
have
right.
found in New York City. Because New York City, the kind of wild hogs they have, you can't hunt them. All right. Let's get to the pharmacy thing. First off, what kind of education is required to be a dispenser of legal pills?
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, you have to kind of define that a little bit. It's changed a lot over the years since I went to school. Nowadays, commonly it requires a 4-year pre-pharmacy. There are certain strict guidelines that you have to have, and then most pharmacy schools are 4 years after that. So approximately 8 years is what it
Whoa.
takes. It can be done a little less than that, but approximately 8 years now. So.
Wow, that's a long time being in school. And I think most people don't realize when they walk up to the pharmacist's window and the counter how long that person was in school
Right.
to prepare.
Right.
8 years, that sounds like being a medical doctor or a doctor
Right.
of osteopathy
Right.
or a doctor of chiropractic or a doctor of audiology or a podiatrist,
Right.
a dentist.
Right, and we are in a lot of the same classes as
Uh-huh.
those types of, professions. We have a lot of same classes that they did that we go along with them in rotations and things like that. So you are correct.
When I was a freshman in college, we had an influx of guys who had a military background who had signed up to go to college. One of them was a guy that you would never think was a submariner. Some people call them submariners, but he was in the Navy, and he was on a submarine. From his size and everything, you're thinking, he was on a submarine? Well, he was. And while he was in the Navy, he had gotten a big tattoo on his forearm. He wanted to become a pharmacist, and so he was in his first year of college and preparing to go that whole route. He had that tattoo burned off because in those days,
yes,
if you had a tattoo, you could not be a pharmacist.
Yeah.
Little tidbit of human interest there. Is that still the same way?
It's not. Obviously, life has changed over the past several years. You do see a lot of people with tattoos. There are some places that you would work that if you have a tattoo that they require that you cover it up, you would have to wear long sleeves so it doesn't show. But as far as I know, I don't think that's a specific requirement, especially for pharmacy school. I don't think they.
Tats have become an industry
They
in the
have,
United
yes.
States. Of course, in
Yes.
some foreign nations, tattoos have been around for hundreds of years,
Correct.
but they've really become the thing
Yes.
in the United States. And I don't have any. And I don't want any.
I don't either.
And let me put it to you in South Missouri hillbilly language. I ain't going to get none. That's the way we speak down here. And that you have to be well educated and intelligent to speak hillbilly.
That's right.
All right, about this pharmacy thing. 8 long years. Where is home to you besides? I know you're in Springfield now or the area.
Right.
But where did you grow up?
I'm actually from Marshfield. I grew up in Marshfield.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I graduated there, lived there since I was 7 years old.
The Blue Jays?
The Blue Jays, correct, yeah. And then, then actually moved to Kansas City. That's when UMKC just had a pharmacy school in Kansas City only, which they have one in Springfield now as well. But went to Kansas City, went to pharmacy school, and my husband and I ended up staying up there for about 10 years. And we had a son and decided we didn't want to raise him in the city. So we moved back to this area.
Okay, now when you went to UMKC, did you go on the undergrad level and just stay through the pharmacy training, or?
Like I said, it was a little different when I
Okay,
went.
so-
Pharmacy school was 3 years, and I actually kind of squished. Back then, you had 2 years pre-pharmacy, and if you could get it all in 2 years, I actually did it in 1 and got into pharmacy school and went 3 years. So I was actually done in 4.
Wonderful.
So yeah, so it was
Well,
great at the time.
I had a friend who's now deceased. He's been deceased about 8 years. He managed in less than 4 years to get his bachelor's and his master's
Wow.
in a very prestigious Northeastern university because the way he signed up for classes, and he was supposed to drop some and only carry. He was carrying an extra heavy
Yes,
load.
correct.
He was able to sneak that by and got it done. But he was in his 30s, and he didn't want to waste a lot of time.
Yes, correct.
You know,
Yeah.
he needed to get to work.
Yes, yes.
So
Yeah.
pharmacy.
Yeah.
Now, in what is the practice of pharmacy like these days? Now let me put some backdrop here. I refer to a lot of stuff from many years ago because I've lived a lot of stuff. Know that TV commercial? We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. All right, well, that's me.
It's you.
I remember in Moberly, Missouri, every doctor's office was about 3 stories up. You had to climb the stairs to get to them. They made house calls carrying a little black bag.
Correct.
They answered their own phone, and they carried medicine in that bag.
Correct.
If they didn't have it in their bag, they would write you a prescription that only the pharmacist could read. And you could take it to Reed's Corner Drugstore, which was about the size of our studios here.
Right, yeah.
And a pharmacist would sometimes concoct
Yes, they
something back.
compound. Yes,
Yeah, it would
compound.
put stuff together with a little
Right.
bowl
Like the mortar
and
and pestle.
mortar and pestle. Yeah. And we just thought between the doctor and the pharmacist, you had arrived, you know. It has changed, hasn't it?
It's changed a lot. Yes, I've been doing it a long time, and it is
Do
drastically
you ever have
changed.
to compound anything now, or does it all come done?
Well, so for the most part, it comes already done because the manufacturers now make just about anything that there is. However, compounding has come back into effect over the past, I would say probably started maybe 10, 12 years ago and has gradually increased because there are so many people with so many different things going on now medical-wise that the doctors are trying to specifically make a formulation for you.
I see.
Maybe what's, commercially available is too strong or not strong enough, so they will actually compound it. So now there are actually several compounding pharmacies, and that's basically all they do is they compound drugs. And there are several here in Springfield.
Yeah, there are.
Now, Nancy, you had some of your most formative years, like from about 7 until 14 or something rather, or more, in Saudi Arabia. Do you recall medical practice there in the American compound?
No, I just remember all the shots that my poor back got before I went.
You said that on television,
I did.
live television.
I know.
What is this world coming to?
Because they had to chase me around the doctor's office to catch up with me to give them to me. But then when I got to Arabia, no, we had probably really good medical care, but all I remember is getting the shots that you had to get every 3 months, 6 months, every year.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Now, Nancy
Wow.
lived for a good long while in the town that got hit by the drones
Yeah.
recently in
Oh
Arabia.
my goodness.
So that was a familiar scene to her. When she traveled, they traveled in Europe and in the Middle East and so forth. So when she came to Springfield and we married, I showed her everything within about 20 or 40 miles of Springfield. It was new to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I've never been outside the continental United States. I have no plan to go. And Nancy, on the other hand, has been all over the world.
Wow.
But I do remember medical practice in Moberly, Missouri, and I compare it now to Springfield, or Springburg, USA, and it's what we had then was very primitive, and in fact, most of the time we went to Reed's Corner Drugstore, it was for my mom to get supplies for home remedies,
Oh, okay, yes. Oh, yes.
which was now like the supplement business.
Right, exactly.
But
exactly.
I have a
yeah.
scar on my face right here that's barely discernible. That at one time it was way down here on my lip. My brother hit me with a club. It was accidental, but he laid me wide open, and we went up to the house, and he was crying more than I was. He was 6 years older than me. He thought that mom was going to
He's
kill
going to
him.
be in trouble.
But my mom invented the butterfly bandage. She pulled it together, taped it together, and never had a stitch.
Wow.
That's the way, so if we went to the doctor or the doctor came to us, it was
It
serious.
was something major.
And if we went to Reed's Corner Drugstore for something that the pharmacist would compound, it was serious. Bobby, I want to stop reminiscing now and get with the current picture, but in the average pharmacy or pharmaceutical outlet or whatever, pharmacy store today, about how many varieties of drugs are on the shelf?
Oh my goodness. I really, I don't even know if I could pick a number or not, just because depending upon the amount of prescriptions you fill per day, it's going to be based upon the amount that you carry. And even what I carry in my store is a very small amount compared to what's out there. So, I mean, there are, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of drugs out there.
That's what I was guessing. And so I marvel at your ability, or any pharmacist that's worth his or her salt, to know these drugs. We have quite a trusting relationship here, that
Correct.
what's in the bottle is what's supposed to be in the
Correct.
bottle.
Correct.
That's right.
And we take that pretty seriously.
Right, right. And you should. You should.
Right. So we have to trust our pharmacist every bit as much or more than we trust our doctor.
Correct.
Because sometimes the doctor may try to prescribe something and the pharmacist will tell you the side effects and is what, so maybe your
Right.
doctor could do something different.
Right, right.
So,
Right.
you're almost the court of last resort when it comes to our medical treatment, and people need to realize that.
Right, and I think nowadays, that the doctors and the pharmacist work together more so. Back in
Right.
the olden days, the doctor just kind of prescribed, the pharmacist did it, and of course there was a lot less going on at the time. Whereas
That's
now there's a
right.
lot that goes on. But nowadays, the doctors and the pharmacies and pharmacists, we all work together. So if there is a better suggestion or an idea or something that comes up, we have a lot of communication, which is great.
And so the really good pharmacists, and hopefully they're all good, not only is cognizant of potentially hundreds of thousands of medicinal combinations, but you have to be pretty well acquainted with a lot of different doctors,
Correct.
all the way from family physicians, primary care, to various specialties.
Right, right.
Because a primary care physician doesn't prescribe for me necessarily what my dermatologist is going
Right,
to prescribe,
right, the
or what my
specialist.
cardiologist is going to prescribe.
Correct.
So you have to know a lot of doctors too.
Right, exactly.
They have to know you when you call.
Some
Now,
of them
this
do.
brings me to this. Nancy, you and I know what it's like to be on the phone as a consumer. And we call our doctor's office. And we get this recording.
Correct.
And the recording gives us all of these options. But the one that really stands out in my mind is, if you are a pharmacist, press so-and-so. I've never done that because I'm not a pharmacist, so I'd rely on you to tell me, when you press that, what happens?
The same thing that happens to you.
I mean, I
For
thought
the
maybe you had a
most-
direct
no,
line or
No,
something.
it's not like the bat phone. You don't just pick it up and get Batman. And a lot of people think that, when they come in, if we have a question and I have to call a doctor's office, because doctor's offices nowadays are just so extremely, busy. And so I don't get a person commonly either. There are a few offices that I call and I can get a person, but most commonly when you push that, pharmacist push line, 8, and I push it, I still have to leave a message just like you do.
Okay, and
it
you
just
leave 'em-
differentiates the calls for them.
You leave a message that says, Paul Collins needs an updated prescription, or so he can get more refills on so-and-so. How do they do that? Do they send you an email, or
Right, and commonly, now, back in the day, once again, everything was on the phone, so you had to, and then it went from phone to the fax machine. Everything was faxed to the doctor's office. Nowadays, pretty much most everything is done on the computer, so basically it's like an email. So I bring up your file. So for the most part, I don't have to call a doctor's office. I just email them the information. It comes onto their computer in a different format than an email, but it comes onto their computer, and they will check it and send me an email back with your prescription. So the only reason I really have to call a doctor and ask a question is if they've sent a prescription and I have a specific question about the medication or
So
something.
my medical prescription records would be in a file folder on a computer.
Correct.
It's-
Yes.
there's
Everything's
no paper.
computerized.
There's-
There's not really too much paper anymore. Yes.
Okay, now,
Yeah.
all of you watching and listening, I know many of you are young people that you haven't seen a prescription yet, and so you think, what's this have to do with me? Just hold on. It will have something to do with you. If you are blessed to live long enough, you will leave a trail of information about pharmaceutical drugs that have been assigned to you. I had a cardiologist tell me 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago in July when I had that first heart attack, he said, you take this aspirin a day and this every day if you want to live. Well, now that's pretty blunt, you know.
Yes.
But it makes, think how that makes me relate to you.
Right.
I have to have a dependable pharmacist. And so all of you that are, you know, thinking about moving along, don't move along. Tell a friend, get on here and pay attention, because we might come back to hog hunting in a little bit. But right now we're talking about some heavy-duty stuff about prescriptions. Now, Matthew Dillon Pearson, are you ready for another commercial? If you are, we'll take it right now. Don't make me do it. Oh, are you ready to do another commercial, Matthew?
I'm not used to you asking that when Jay's not here, but yes. Give me a second.
You now, what was Matt Dillon's sidekick's name? His,
Festus.
well, but after
Festus.
Chester was Festus. So I call Jason Festus.
Jason,
And Jason has never seen Gunsmoke. You know, these guys are so young,
They're young.
they don't know good if it walked up and bit them.
okay, so we're good on Jay's camera. All they're seeing is me moving around back here.
Oh, yeah, well, you just put that message out there for us. 'Cause
All right, so
while you're doing that, I'm letting Bobby rest.
Bobby, you need a rest, do you? Been pretty rough today.
It has been.
All right, hey everybody, thanks for joining us on the show today. Thank you, Dr. Paul, for throwing me under the bus.
You're
Just
welcome.
kidding. I should have been paying more attention.
That's right.
Anyways, as your producer, I should be paying a
That's
lot more
right.
attention. I get distracted. Today's show is brought to you by Natural Solution Store, .bz, and a product that Dr. Paul was talking about earlier was Aronia. Let me tell you a little bit something about Aronia. If I can find it here, all you have to do is just go on here at naturalsolutionstore.bz, scroll down through the pictures and stuff. I happen to be on page number 2 because I look through this website all the time. Just see they've added new stuff because they're adding new stuff all the time. Did you know that, Dr. Paul?
Right.
They are. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, I hear you
Not popping or
fine.
not? Okay,
Nope.
good. All right, so Aronia, you were talking about this.
I was
The
talking about
benefits of it-
CoQ10.
Oh,
But Aronia, I'm a believer in that because it really helps your blood pressure.
yes.
So go ahead.
And not only does it do that, but it also helps to regulate your blood sugar, supports colon health.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, like you said, blood pressure, reduces weight gain, and it reduces eye inflammation, of all things.
Mm-hmm.
You ever had a swollen eye ball? You have eye inflammation, this would help with that. Now, clinical studies of Aronia show positive effects on heart disease, brain health, cholesterol, blood pressure, diabetes, and cancer. It's got a list of the ingredients on there, one of them including resveratrol, which we have in its pure form also on naturalsolutionstore.bz. And, you know, I told you guys that I was going to talk about CoQ10, and that does need to be brought up, Dr. Paul, because it is a very, very good supplement, along with berberine HCI. That's another one of those. It's one of those Swiss Army knives of natural supplements. CoQ10, or coenzyme Q10, actually, I think is what that means, right?
Mm-hmm.
It supports heart health also, promotes energy production in cells, and it maintains helps you maintain a healthy blood pressure. So, and Dr. Paul takes this on a regular basis, and he swears by it. And it also is good with those who are taking statin drugs. It also, maybe if you talk to your doctor, if it works out, maybe you could eliminate your statin drug altogether. But of course, with anything, don't change your medicinal regimen without the consultation of your doctor, and let him know what you're taking, what you want to take, and what you want it to do. So always consult a physician before changing your diet or using a new food. What we can do is go online, naturalsolutionstore.bz, pick yourselves up a bottle of CoQ10 or Aronia or resveratrol, today. Back to you guys.
All right. Thank you very much, Matthew. And by the way, as a result of today's broadcast, we could honestly say, too, check with your pharmacist, because most pharmacies now have within easy reach all kinds of supplements.
Correct. Yes.
I mean,
yes. A lot of your natural supplements.
A lot of shelf space devoted to it.
Absolutely.
Well, we're back with Bobby, and we're not going back to the hog hunting just yet. Instead, we want to get into a little consideration of the pharmaceutical industry itself. We know, if we've been following the news at all, that drug prices are a constant source of political talk and so forth.
Correct.
We know that not one price fits all.
No, that is correct.
Depending on your insurance and so forth, and whether or not the drug is generic. I think where we need to start with this is, what is the difference between a name brand drug and one that we say is generic?
Okay. So the active ingredients are identical. Same amount, everything is the same. Some of the inactive ingredients, the inert parts, it may be a different color, so they may be using a different dye. Something that holds the tablet together, if it's a tablet, holds the tablet together, that may be a little bit different. Other than that, they're identical. So basically, the brand name companies, they have research and development, and they've researched this product for X number of years. They have a patent on the drug. Once they've made that, it's basically, for instance, if you were at home making a cake and I borrowed your recipe, which we wouldn't want Bobby making a cake because I don't cook. But if I borrowed her recipe, so she's come up with everything, her cake is perfect, and I borrow her recipe. So I'm going to follow that recipe for the main ingredients, but I may decide that if you're using a white cake, I may decide to put some food coloring in it and make it a pink cake or something like that. So the actual ingredient and what the medication does is to be the same.
So then the major difference becomes price.
Correct, because, for instance, that company has spent millions of dollars researching, developing on that drug over an X number of years, and now that that patent is expired, I can just take their recipe and make it. So now I've not spent all that money making that, so now I can make it at a less expensive price than that brand name company did. So
See,
therefore your price difference.
I liken this, Bobby, to when I was working in small grocery stores many years ago as a kid. There were certain brands of canned goods, some brands that you don't hear of today, like Richelieu. And I worked in a corner grocery store that delivered. And, of course, now we've come full circle. Now we have all these stores delivering.
Right, right.
But anyway, we delivered. But these old ladies would call in, and they didn't want a can of peas unless it was Richelieu, or a can of green beans. It had to be Richelieu.
Right.
And so there were certain name brands. Now, some that we're still familiar with, like Van Camp. Van Camp's pork and beans. We were still familiar with that.
Right.
But there were some names that became so common that anybody could use it, like Jell-O.
Right. Right.
So
and it still is just Jell-O.
Jell-O,
Yes.
but they can call any gelatin dessert Jell-O.
Right. Right.
So they lose their brand name in this process. I remember when white cans with black print came out, was generic canned goods.
Right. Right.
And then later there were some brands that developed, like Always Save and so forth. Well, Nancy, where she grew up, they used all name brand stuff. So I had to train her that what was in this can
was the same.
was as good as what was in that can.
Right.
And she got the message, because now not only does she save that way, but today, after this broadcast, we'll be going to Surplus Grocery Warehouse, and we go 2 or 3 times a week, and we buy all kinds of brands at a...
That's an actual place?
Yes, of course. We
Do you need a membership to get in there?
No.
Where's that at?
Oh, it's on South Campbell in Springburg, USA. South Campbell. It's the free commercial for them, by the way, because we believe in what they're doing. We're going to have the owner from Kansas City on this show to tell us where he gets all this stuff. but they're the Shadowwood Shopping Center, a little shopping mall there on the east side of South Campbell, south of James River Freeway. And they're on the back side of Shadowwood on the northeast corner.
What's the business called?
Surplus Grocery Warehouse. And
It's good stuff.
and we're going to have the owner from Kansas City on so he can tell us how he finds all this stuff, because they get about 2 or 3 truckloads a week. That's why we go pretty often. Okay, I'm going to get back to the pharmaceutical industry. They do have supplements on their shelf, by the way. Back to the pharmaceutical industry. Bobby, there are some people who are still Richelieu conscious, I call it, who may think that if this drug doesn't have the original brand name on it, but it's generic,
Right.
that they can't trust it,
Correct.
the quality.
Correct.
I know nothing about this except to compare it to the grocery industry.
Oh,
And there are standards of production,
Absolutely.
no matter
Yes.
what you're canning or bottling.
Correct.
So there's really no reason for people to be concerned about a drug that's become generic.
I mean, there really is not. That's something that they would need to discuss with their doctor
And their
first,
pharmacist.
and their pharmacist. And the doctor is the one that has to initially approve if generic is okay
Mhm.
or not. So it's kind of up to the doctor. So if the patient has a question, it's a good idea to chat with their doctor, chat with the pharmacist, and see, kind of the opinion of both. If the doctor thinks it's a great idea, talk to the pharmacist thinks it's a great idea, then hopefully it will save them money because it is a less expensive choice.
See, we still, even though we're pretty close to all of our doctors, and we have a corral full of them at our age, but we believe in our pharmacy. And the other day, Nancy heard something on the news about one of my blood pressure meds causing cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So she asked one of your staff people,
Mm-hmm.
and she had the answer like that. No, it's not this one.
Right. Right.
It's not any that you carry.
Right.
So if I had called my doctor's office,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have had to wait until maybe the next day to get a return call, and they wouldn't have known anything about that.
Well, the thing is, when it comes to pharmaceutical drugs, and what you're talking about is a recall, and this recall has been going on actually for a long time on a couple drugs that are very similar for blood pressure. So what it has to do with, there's different manufacturers, and so initially it started off with certain manufacturers that there was an issue. So these manufacturers and the drug wholesalers send notices out to the pharmacy that there is a drug recall. So we get those on a daily basis. They send it to me and they'll say, here's the drug, here's the strength. Each one has a lot number and an expiration date, just like a canned good would at the grocery
Sure.
store. And you check your stock to see if you have that, and of course you immediately pull it. So we keep track of that. So for instance, if you called the other day and asked me, I can tell by what brand that I had filled for you as to whether or not it correlates with what was recalled. So it's a pretty immediate response, whereas your doctor's offices don't have that information.
That's what
They
I
might
thought.
just be able to say, yes, we see you're on that medication. You need to call the pharmacy and ask them specifics
That's right.
on it.
Exactly my
So-
point.
Yeah.
I've got a question. Are there a few or many meds, I'll say, that are made overseas?
There are a lot, yes, and people don't realize that.
Okay, then, the places where they are made, is all that regulated? Does
It,
do
it,
they-
it, it is regulated. It is to be regulated, I will say. And the same thing in the U.S. I mean, they have regulations. So I think there are probably the same amount of issues in the U.S. that there probably are overseas. They are all still regulated. They all still have to follow the same policies and procedures. But once again, you're out of the country. But yes, there are a large amount of the meds that are, yeah.
Since we brought up that I lived overseas,
Uh-huh.
and I told Paul this, and it's really a negative about my thinking, but I'll say it anyway. We were on a plane and we were stopped, and I don't know if we were going to Sri Lanka or where, but we were still on the plane, and the plane was being refueled or something, and I don't remember my age either. I looked out and I thought, oh, I hope they know what they're doing. I thought, oh, Jesus, I can't think that way. That's not good. So I quit thinking that. That's not a good thing to even say. And it's like you're putting somebody down. Didn't mean to, but that's what crossed my mind. It still crosses my mind in a way when I
Right.
look at some countries, because there's more people, and the looks of the country, they aren't like nice and neat and orderly and all
Right.
that, and that's a wrong way to look at somebody.
Right.
But then when you talk about making medicine,
Right. Sterility procedures
All of
and
that,
yes,
yes.
correct. Yeah.
Nancy
it can be
being a-
kind of scary the more you start thinking about it.
yes,
Nancy, being a nurse, was always very aware of sterile procedures,
Yeah.
for infection control.
yeah,
So she's the same way about medicine and airplanes and who's servicing airplanes, etc. And they say an ounce of caution is worth a pound of prevention or something
Correct.
like that,
Yes.
All
Yes.
right, the pharmaceutical industry. I'm going to bring up something here, and this is, I see you back, Festus. Glad to have you. Okay. My handy-dandy little communication device right here has news on it, and this news is 3 years old. So this really high-tech, up-to-date thing that's supposed to be cutting edge, now for all you high-tech people, it's reporting, as of this morning, something that's 3 years old.
Wasn't the phone like at least 4 years old?
Well, that doesn't have anything to do with it.
Oh,
It's I'll tell you what, Matthew, Dylan, Pearson, you were pretty. Have you ever noticed the openings to Gunsmoke? Matt Dillon is outdrawn by that guy down the street, but Matt just shoots straighter. I shoot straight,
but I'm mad.
but you're up against a new opponent. This opponent shoots straighter than Matt.
Well, I would never shoot my elders, Dr. Paul.
Oh, good for you.
I respect you too much.
That's right. And whatever you do, don't shoot your doctor.
No, don't shoot your doctor or your pharmacist.
That's right. Big Pharma CEO quoted, "We're in the business of shareholder profit, not the business of helping the sick."
yeah.
Last July, 3 years ago, Turing, Turing Pharmaceuticals CEO Martin Shkreli became a lightning rod for growing outrage over soaring prescription drug prices after he raised the price of a newly acquired drug from $13.50 to $750. He earned the title the most hated man in America because of raising a drug price. Well, you
Yeah.
have to read the whole article,
Right.
put things in context.
Right.
We do know that there's two sides to this issue. Number one, do you want just some guy in his garage concocting a new medicine for you?
Right.
I don't think so.
Right.
I did something like that when I was a kid. I got a bottle, and I put some water in it, and I got some of my mom's ivory snowflakes. That was a dishwasher detergent, and I put it down there in that water, and I found something else that would smell good and put it in there, and I shook it up and I set it, because I was playing chemist. I was going to invent something. I invented a bar of soap. I was so proud of it. You don't want somebody like me putting together your pharmaceutical drugs. Life and death is in the equation. So it is very expensive to have the equipment.
Correct.
We're talking very precise equipment that not just anybody can manufacture.
Right.
This is all highly specialized. Anything that's steel is of the highest quality. Anything that's glass, anything that's plastic, whatever they use,
Right.
this stuff is highly refined. Nancy talks about sterile procedures and infection control. We're talking about expensive outfits that people wear in that lab while they're
Yes.
working. A lot of it disposable. You can't wear it but once.
Correct.
This is and the building they're in with the proper heating and air and circulation. People don't realize that producing a quality pharmaceutical drug is an extremely expensive process. Plus, the people who have the brains
Right.
to know how to work in that lab,
Yeah.
they don't come cheap.
Right. They have
Listen,
some schooling.
I was a pre-med student. Let me tell you, general chemistry, that was a breeze. But you get into qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis and organic chemistry, they're going to cut you a wide swath because it takes some brains to get through those classes. And anyone that's involved like these people are in those labs probably also were students of physics. And I took a lowly little old engineering physics class, and it drained everything that I ever had in solid geometry and algebra and trigonometry and calculus out of me. These folks are highly trained, highly skilled, and they work under intense pressure. This is an expensive process.
Right.
Now,
Right.
when that drug first comes on the market, our monetary system is set up so that the folks who have invested their hard-earned money in a pharmaceutical company can get a reasonable return on their investment. Right now, if you have any money at all, and it's like in a CD, you're not keeping up with inflation. I mean, somebody that's worked hard and saved $10,000 is entitled to a return on their investment if they invest in a pharmaceutical stock. So there's two sides to the issue. Now, I do know that they have CEOs and executives who are paid what seems to be outlandish amounts of money.
Correct.
But the higher you go up the leadership chain, the more that's expected of you, the fewer missteps you're allowed to have, a lot of pressure. And some of these CEOs, they get up there with that big salary, they make one mistake, they're down and out. They're done. So there's a reason for this pricing. However, that's not to say that all of it is excusable,
That
because
is
it's not.
correct. And that's just an opinion, but I completely agree.
For instance, I take a drug, Eliquis, that's not yet available in generic.
Correct.
Nancy and I are on Medicare. When you get in the donut hole, they call it, which means you've spent, your Medicare fund has spent X amount of dollars. By the way, none of our prescriptions are free, but you get in that donut then all of a sudden the price of Eliquis went from $47 for 30-day supply to $135 or $40 or something, $170, something or other, because we were in the donut hole. So all of you listening to me need to pay attention to what comes in the mail, pay attention to the news, pay attention to your health, pay attention to these things because they are important for your health, they're important for your pocketbook to know where you are on things. And we'll have to have Bobby back another time, Nancy, because we have a lot of other stuff to talk with her about. But I've got to come back now quickly to the hog hunting because it'll be rare for us to ever have another guest who has hunted wild hogs. And she doesn't cook, you said, so
I don't.
obviously your husband does the smoking of them,
He
puts them on the
does,
grill.
yes, and he is an awesome cook. Thank gosh.
Do you keep your freezer pretty well stocked as long as you can get to Texas?
Yes, most of the time, yes.
I just think it's great. Where else but on the happy hour broadcast would you have somebody talking about hunting wild hogs? Got 2 minutes to tell you. One of our guests coming up in the near future, Dee Wampler, international, well, at least nationally well-known defense attorney and the author of some interesting books, one of which is How to Work with the Cops or something like that if you get caught. And Another one is a defense attorney defends or examines the trial of Jesus of Nazareth. And from a defense lawyer's standpoint, he says Jesus was innocent. Now, Matt, I have a different slow close today. Festus, you're awake. You'll appreciate this. A different slow close. I have 1 minute and a few seconds. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, my dear Nancy. Happy birthday tomorrow to you.
That's so
How about that?
Sweet.
Internationally, I proclaim my love for you, my love. All right, you hurrying me up? Okay, it's a happy hour with Dr. Paul and Nancy and our special guest, Bobby Terry, pharmacist and swine hunter, wild swine hunter par excellence. We will look forward to seeing you next Friday right here with another very interesting guest. Until then, I'd like to tell you how I sign every one of my emails. Stay blessed.